I'm excited to see if the seeing the Twitch live messes up the camera.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Twitch artist live stream for Black Future 88. I am here with Zac, and Zac is the lead artist and kind of with Super Scary Snakes for a period. He also does his own thing. So, Zac, here's how we're going to begin this. In PAX and all the rest of the times we've met up, I think of you as Zac Bolubasz. But how do you say your last name properly with your French last name?
Okay, so that's funny because I don't
It sounded delicious
really
to me.
know.
You don't really know?
Yeah, I don't really know how to pronounce my last name because I was told by some people at Creative Forge that it's pronounced Bolubasz.
Oh.
But I'm also not sure.
So is it Polish then?
I thought it was Polish. I'm being told by like family members now that it's Ukraine. So who knows at this point? People ask like at Rite Aid or just like general stores
At Rite Aid.
where I'm from, and it's like, oh, it's like Eastern European.
Eastern European. Okay.
So that I just kind of like leave it at that.
You're from everywhere and nowhere.
I'm an everywhere kind of guy. Yeah.
Okay. So let us know in chat, guys, if there's anything funny. I've tried to balance the sound, etc., but you never know. Most of our conversation is going to be happening in Discord, which is our primary Q&A area. I'm going to give you a link in the chat if you want to go there and leave your questions. If you don't and you want to do it in Twitch, I may feel generous later and take those questions. But first, before we begin with a lot of questions, Black Future 88, the game that you should be interested in if you are here, is a synthpunk roguelike 2D action shooter, big mouthful, where you vertically climb an always evolving procedural tower to reach and kill its insane owner before your heart explodes in 18 minutes. So you shoot, slash, dash, and upgrade yourself to survive the endless waves of AI, traps, and wardens, which you will see in some of our concept art today. So, Zac, let's start. Don Bellinger is the man from Super Scary Snakes. So how did you meet him and end up becoming part of this project?
That is a funny story.
Oh, good.
Because
I like funny stories.
Basically, I was in college, still studying art and doing game art stuff at MICA here in Baltimore. And I was like really struggling with putting together a portfolio because when you're doing like a game arts major, it's hard to have something that's worth showing portfolio wise because a lot of your projects wind up being like game prototypes and art typically doesn't go anywhere past like the first iteration.
Okay.
So like, and you're still learning how to do art for like all these different projects, 2D and 3D. Which kind of never gets a chance to get developed really at all until my thesis, which I was like, I'm gonna go all out on the art side on this, and I'm not gonna really care about the gameplay. And from then I just kind of started posting online and was like, hey, here's a screenshot of my thesis. It's whatever. I posted on ArtStation.
It's whatever.
Yeah, I don't care. It's crappy. But at the time I was really proud of it and I was tossing it up on places like ArtStation, which if you know ArtStation, you know that people don't post a lot of pixel art because it's usually for like Riot concept art and this is Tracer from Blizzard, from Overwatch.
I see, like fan art, you're saying.
Like not even just fan art, but like really, really, high-end industry standard kind of the AAA look.
Oh.
And I was like, this nobody dude putting up these crappy pixel art pictures on, and suddenly Don hit me up and was like, hey, I like these. And the rest is history. Now he contacted me and then emailed me and said, "Hey, I'm working on this super small, super low key thing. It's like on the side. I'm doing this. I'm like ignoring my job here because he had a full-time job at the time. He's like, yeah, I'm just kind of like ignoring my job and doing this on the side. Don't tell anyone."
Yeah.
And
that changed.
yeah, it totally did change. But after that, he said, "Hey, I need some concept art because I thought I might put some art in here."
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, why did you decide to go to school for art? Like, that's one of those things where you really have to be passionate and pretty talented to decide that's where you're putting all your eggs. That's your career. You're gonna go for it.
Yeah, that's a question. Because
I say this with a fine arts degree.
it's weird because man, this is hard to talk about because I think a lot of people go into art and go into game arts because they think there's a lot of money in it, and like realistically that's not a good way of thinking about your art career if you're going into like specifically the games industry to make bank. Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to come from the fact that you just want to make cool stuff and you want to make art that you would personally want to look at, and not necessarily thinking about it as like a product to get you to the next rent paycheck.
That's unusual. I didn't realize like the perception was that like game artists were making hand over fist sexy money.
Yeah, it's because it's especially here at Micah. I don't know how it is in other art schools, but they kind of section you off into these like applied arts and fine arts, where like in fine arts you're like painting, throwing ink on a canvas and hanging it up to dry, and then applied arts is like the money making art, like graphic design,
animation, and graphic design,
animation, and game arts at least here is like very obviously pushed off into the applied arts, but kind of wiggles into the fine arts where a lot of the projects that you get are like explore yourself and express yourself through games. So at the same time you're like building a portfolio that is very strange and very art museum-y, like art gallery-esque, but at the same time you're like showing this to people expecting industry standard things.
Gotcha. Well, we're talking about all your art and not showing any of your art. So I'm going to flip over to the concept art page, and we're going to see the first ones we're going to see. And I apologize to Twitch because there's going to be a lot of clicking. There's just so many of these. I got to click. Okay, so the first one we're seeing is the air tank, and this is the finished one, and I'll show the non-finished one too. And the defense drone concept art. So when you got, I guess the concept and people broke down the essential like production notes of Black Future 88, what were you working with when they originally said like, hey, there's AI in this, there's robots in this, there's different kinds of enemies? Like, what information did you have before you started to like visualize the world and create that?
Zero. There was like no art direction for the longest time, and that was really tough, especially me in college doing this as like a side project. I was taking concept art classes at the same time. So I would go to class and I would like do my homework and then go home and then do this thing for a client that it just felt weird because I was learning and then I was like, bull rushed right into the project. So that was really, really tough, especially because we didn't have any direction. Don, the one programmer who was also making all the sound, was like, it's got this theme. It's cyberpunk, but a little worse.
A little grittier.
It's like gritty. It's like the darker future. It's the black future. And we actually didn't like settle on that name until a lot later. But he just kind of let me run with it and said, there are these there are these enemies that behave in this specific way. How do you think they would look? And I think the great example of this because in this case, he did give me a little bit of direction, which was it's like an old IBM computer. It's like an old, like, beige colored computer desktop tower flying around. And I was like, okay, I can do something with that. I just like put a box on the screen and put a giant ass gun hanging from the bottom of it. And there's the tank, and it's like one of my favorite enemies in the game.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the concept art all the way to the finish, so people can kind of see, like, here it is, in sketch form, here it is beginning to play with color, here's one of the finals. And the enemies do come in different flavors of color in the game, but you can see this one right now, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's weird because a little later on when we were revising the enemy sprites, because, like, the first time I did them, I was like, these look great. And then we took the game to PAX and GDC the first time, and then we came back and said, no, these actually kind of suck.
Oh, no.
And at the time, we didn't actually have like a color palette picked out for the enemies. And if you look at the game now, most of them have the same kind of color palette. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the small, like, circle drones and the rocket drones and stuff, we kind of decided to settle on this orange, like industrial orange and black. Like, I don't know. I'd have to like see the sprites in front of me.
I'm gonna maybe see if I can find this video so people can see it, and I'll throw it behind all of us so they can watch in the middle. So
orange, a lot of orange and black.
Yeah, so people can see this, and
but man, I'm like, if you saw the game last year and you thought the enemies looked cool, I'm sorry because
I'm sorry.
They did not look good.
All right, let me find out.
I'm glad we redid them. But I was learning at the time, like, there's no real textbook on how to make pixel art. It's kind of like pick a resolution and then just keep drawing until you see something you like. And that's just kind of what happened. I wasn't like referencing any other game. Don just gave me a resolution and said, make the sprites this big, and then I just kind of
nice.
Yeah.
Well, you can see, I mean, the color palette is very like purple and green and yellow, which is unusual, I think, and different. Like, I like the use of purple.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that as much. So it's neat. It's a combo that you wouldn't expect, but I like the red, purple, yellow.
Yeah, that was great because when we were sort of figuring out the main mechanics of the game, like the chemistry of the world, right? There are these things like everything that's red is hot, right?
Okay.
All of the normal bullets are yellow, and things that would curse you are purple. And having those kind of constraints was really fun for me, especially when designing the weapons. I think one of the Discord questions was how did I design the weapons?
Yeah, let's see.
Like the process of it. Let me see.
Let's take a question here. Let me scroll up. Yeah, here's one from Matt. How hard was it to try and stick with a consistent cyberpunk art style? And I think that kind of plays into what you're discussing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I answered that with
what you just said.
With what I said before in saying we didn't have a consistent style and we had to redo a lot of things. So that it was just really, really challenging kind of doing it all on the fly. But I think once I made a drone, like one enemy sprite that I really liked, I think it's actually...
What's the name of it?
Ah, man. There's like so much art in this game.
Yeah, I'm looking at, let's see.
There's a couple of them that, like, once we got those done, we were like, that's the look.
Let's look at enemies. That might be where you're looking at too.
Oh, these are old. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, these are like the initial
so
sketches.
Bad. These are bad.
Bad. This is like very, and this plays into one of the questions where they're saying like, what is your approach to character design given the limits of the minimalistic style? Is it more gestural? And that's from Antiplur. So these are very early and very gestural. So why don't you talk about these? If you can see them, enemies 1 and 2.
What's cool for this specific prompt, I think Don said, "Hey, give me like 200 sketches of enemies." Right? He didn't give me any mechanics. He gave me a couple of them that were like, some of them need to fly, some of them need to walk around, some of them need to be like bipedal. And with that, I just kind of opened up a Photoshop file and just started painting on my little tablet, and like was literally creating these enemies with the intention of pitching mechanics to him, like.
Oh, okay. Like, based on how this is.
Yeah, based on how some of these looked. You know, the ones that are circled here in red are the ones that made it into the game for the most part. And these were just like you know, the for example, the one that's really tall and has the kind of spider legs with the...
I hate them with their blast of flight.
Yeah, so that was like supposed to be like rockets, right? It's supposed to have like a huge rocket salvo. And just when we gave that concept to Theo, who actually did that enemy, Theo's one of the artists who animated all the bosses and all of the players. He was like, "Oh, it's a laser beam, I guess."
Okay.
And then it just, to be honest, I actually don't know who decided how that changed or not. But I guess the long story of it is that a lot of these were just things that I thought would be cool that we could add into the game. Like, oh, what if they're like giant enemies that you could walk on? And then sure enough, we put in like those giant red enemies that I feel like we should redo those sprites.
But don't even start.
I know. I feel like we need to, because I know there's some things that we need to leave alone, but like.
See, this is the artist's burden, though. The artist's burden is always to want to keep on iterating, because nothing is never finished. I don't think with the artists I talk to, they're like, I could have made it better. I could have done this thing, and it would have been better. But you know what? I think it's awesome.
Like these ones with the crappy gradient background that you're showing right now are.
These are very conceptual.
Why did I decide to do this? Like put these glitch effects on everything, and looking back on it now, it's like I would never give this to a client, but I totally gave it to Don, and then he gave me money in return.
Oh,
like I conned this guy.
No. All right, so back to concept art here. I think the last one I have to show was, let's see, no, not that one, this one. Which we can't, originally, we had asked you to do a cover of Wireframed magazine. It ended up being switched out for something a little tamer, but I thought this was a great concept and a really fine piece. So I wanted to show it and let people know that this is here. And it's definitely going to get used for something because it's way too cool to just keep it in archive.
Yeah,
but
that's cool.
Yeah, so tell about all the little enemies inside. And there's a lot of things happening in the white space there and also in the Black Future surrounding weapons, if you want to point them out.
Well, what's funny is that when Don said, he's like, hey, we need merch, like we need stuff that isn't pixel art. Can you do this? And he gave me a couple of like little prompts to do, like the skull that you showed at the very beginning. And this one, I did a bunch of like shirt designs, and it was like a really great way for me to get away from pixel art because, you know, when you start doing a style that's as niche as pixel art, you kind of get pegged as that artist, and it's hard to get a job because people are like only seeing the pixels and not seeing the illustrations. So these were really fun for me to like really go in and just be loose with it. So
yeah. Well, I'm gonna push now your Redbubble shirt. This is also similar to another piece which we can't talk about yet, but other people will see more towards launch. And here, let's see, this is, I'm gonna put this in the chat and possibly here. So these Redbubble shirts, Of which I'm wearing, and I'll show you. Black Future
Really?
88. Yes, I'm wearing it.
What?
Yeah, I bought
How did
one.
you get it in blue?
It's purple because it was offered, and I support you. I support you, Zach.
But I thought I put them as black only.
Well, sorry, I have the ladies purple. Yeah, these are not. As the publisher, Good Shepherd, we don't get anything from this. This is supportive to Zach. So if you want to talk about, like, I don't know, how does that work for you when you sell these on Redbubble, and if people want one, they can grab it? It's not official. It's an unofficial Black Future 88.
It's like fan art. I'm like making an official fan
Unofficial, but with the artist who's officially doing all that. Yeah.
Oh, but you mentioned like all the little nooks and crannies of
Yes,
the pieces. So I love, something that I loved about doing these was like just really going in and like zooming in as far as I could and just putting in little bit of details. Because it largely just kind of evolved from like this giant blob that I shaped in the middle of the screen, and it was like, I'll paint it yellow, and then, oh, what if it's a skull, you know, like, oh man, what if the skull has like weird guns coming off of it? And the more I just sort of like went into it, I developed a like muscle memory for these little details. And I got to a point where I was like, there's too much space in here. I need to fill it with something. And one of those is like, if I had a bit of like space in the piece that I needed to fill with detail, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna toss teeth in there, right? Like whatever that is, that's a jaw now.
Yeah.
So if you look really, really closely, you can see a lot of teeth.
There are.
And, like, I don't know why, just teeth are just so much fun to draw. And there's, like, I put little kind of callbacks to elements in the game, like on the yellow Black Future details. You could see all the bosses have a little sketch.
Yeah, I wish I could blow this up. It just won't allow me to do that in there.
There's some like secrets in there that are kind of maybe alluding to future content, like some iconography that might resemble something in the future. And you know, I try to hide my name in there, like my my Twitter handle.
Yeah, why do you go by Sneb?
That's
How do you
a
say
good
it?
question. It's Sneb.
Sneb.
It's just dumb. It's silly. And
like, what's the silliest name I can find? And Sneb was
like
it?
silly and simple. It's like easy to say and it's easy to write down. It's not like Headhunter XX_29, right? And Sneb is just like kind of dumb. It's silly.
God, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna go to here the concept art, and we're gonna look at your site really quick, and then we're gonna take questions by people because that's kind of what we're doing here. All right, so. This is your website on ArtStation, which I linked earlier, and there's a lot of really awesome stuff for Black Future. Like,
Yeah, there's a lot.
here's some of the hunters, and we talk about art, but you've got animations in here too, which it should be mentioned because I'm not sure exactly which things in the game that you did as far as animations, but
Yeah.
they're very cool. So here's the
It's
hunters.
blurry.
Yeah, is it blurry? Cinder.
No. I mean, like the question
line.
of what did you do in the game gets blurry the more stuff we add.
Yeah, like the death animations you can see. I think this is Cinder, with a little kind of, figurine of puppet and how it falls down after that, which is really neat.
What's really funny is that I was doing these animations. A lot of the enemies have death animations, and if you play the game, you'll notice that there aren't really any death animations because when you kill an enemy, the sprite turns black and then they kind of ragdoll, like they break into parts or they fall onto the ground and bounce around. And so a lot of these animations aren't seen unless you look really closely because you have to get rid of the sprite when they die because otherwise it just clutters the screen. And I totally understand it, but if you look really closely, you can see like the dude falling off of the jetpack or the guy's jetpack like going crazy and he falls into the ground. And because the game is like so fast, you really don't have enough time to look at the art and appreciate it unless you pause or waste time.
Like freezing the screen at that moment.
Yeah. But I kind of made it a personal goal to put a lot of frames of animation and a lot of special animations in the idols and in the attacks so that if you do take the time to look at them, you can kind of appreciate them or find a little Easter egg or something kind of funny. But if you're going to do that, you definitely have to like waste a lot of time and risk dying. But
Yeah. No, I think the eye sees that, even if not consciously. I think that people appreciate that, like on an unconscious level. It just gives it a little extra something.
yeah,
I'm looking at the Cursed Survivor.
yeah, that guy's
Chilling
great.
out. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. Some of it isn't all from Black Future 88. Some of it is from other stuff that might be unnamed or from other stuff. So do you want to talk? Let's go back to your screen here. Let's talk about like behind you. You've got this board
Oh, yeah.
full of art.
It's yeah, because right now I'm working at an animation studio in Baltimore, and I can't say a lot about what we're doing, but I mean, how do I phrase this? It's the Outlook company, and that company has done Netflix cartoons before.
Uh-huh.
And if you've ever heard of the show Kulapari, which is a kid's cartoon, or it's just like an action cartoon about frogs, fantasy frogs in the Australian outback.
Okay.
I don't want to say too much.
No, that's
but
fine. That's fine. But you can
that
see
is
that's
something
pretty
that
cool.
they have done. So we're doing stuff here, and there's definitely nothing in the background that you can like
Like see very clearly. No.
yeah, or see very clearly or figure out what we're doing. But it's fun. It's nice taking a break from games, but I'm starting to miss it a lot. It's a totally different kind of process making art for games than it is making art for anything else, and it's just like a totally different world. Game design.
All right, let's get to questions. I'm neglecting the community here. It is a
Oh, yeah.
Q&A.
Forget the community.
Jay Camarasa asks, the game has an aggressive usage of post-process effects, glow tint, chromatic aberration. Does this affect in any way your asset production process?
It does. Specifically, when I'm making a sprite, the sprite goes into the sprite editor in Unity, and Don cuts it up, puts it in the game, and anything that is like bright white, like the whitest it can be, will be bloomed. And he has a couple of post-processing shaders and effects that depend on how bright the sprite is and like what layers there are. So I have a lot of enemies that have like little blinking lights and stuff, and if they're white, they'll be bloomed, and he can change that color. And if it's on its own effect, I usually make an effects layer. Then that's something he knows should be like bloomed out, or should have smoke coming off of it, or have put a lens flare in. So
we're looking at portals right now behind you, so I think that
Oh,
might be
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
example. Yeah. Cool.
So those portals are like the sprite are just white, and in the game, in the engine, he's telling it to glow and to glow purple. So a lot of these sprites are like a little less colorful on the sprite sheet than they are in the game, and that's because there's so many effects that are changing the colors and making things pop. And it wasn't tough, but it was definitely something that I needed to like really, really think about when I was designing these dudes.
Neat.
Yeah.
All right, the tank engine is touching on something we talked about a little, but I would like to focus on weapons. He's saying, she was saying, what techniques or references do you use to come up with and design the diverse arsenal of weapons? What's your weapon inspiration?
Weapon inspiration. So I like Pinterest because it's very easy to find a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to explain what Pinterest is to people, but I usually just kind of put a really big list of like weapons that I think have a great shape to them. To me, as an artist, I think it's important for specifically weapons to have a silhouette that looks nice. You know, it doesn't have to look like a gun to function like a gun. It just has to look nice as an image on its own. And so when I'm making these sprites, I wouldn't sketch them out like I would with the enemies on Photoshop or on paper. I would literally just take them into Sprite, which is the program that I use, and just kind of make a gun and then just change the shape of it as much as I can to fit the needs of the weapon. Like, if there's a rocket launcher that I know that needs to be something that's really bulky and like really heavy. Mm-hmm. And if it's a hot weapon, then maybe I need to have some pipes coming off of it, or like a big rail going down the middle. And so a lot of that is just like copy paste one weapon that I design and just changing it up as much as I can, and then keeping it on the palette. If you go to my ArtStation, I think the very first image is like the big weapon sheet.
Yeah.
You can kind of see that while they're all lined up. A lot of them, they all have the same color palette if they're like in the same weapon archetype, but they all, especially the purple night weapons, I really wanted to. Yeah, those are, I mean, all the weapons in the game are fun, but the night weapons are insane.
Yeah, they teleport you to the location of the death of the enemy that you just completed. So you fly around the room and you can really plan sort of angularly how to kill multiple people in a very quick succession.
Yeah, it's a great way to get yourself lost. Especially if you get the perks that let your bullets bounce.
And then don't do that.
You like shoot once and then you don't know where you are and everything's dead.
And then you explode yourself with the bullets.
And then you explode yourself.
Yeah, definitely there is a danger factor to doing that. So let's see. Let's see. I think SKM1134 is asking what your creative process looks like. You just described that in going into the sprite editor and doing that. They want to know if you use pencil sketches or if it's all like you jump into the computer and begin digitally.
You know what? The best answer for this is you should always keep it on paper first, because so much of what having a good drawing is about like muscle memory and the way that your hand makes contact with the paper. And I don't do that because I'm lazy and I should do it more, which is like my answer for it is I don't, but I need to. But yeah, it's like super good to just keep it all on like a sketchbook or notebook paper or anything.
Yeah, just as ideas occur to you, like then you have to hold them in your brain until you sit down at a computer. Like,
yeah,
are you that guy that wakes up at midnight going, oh my gosh, Bloodlands!
I've got this idea. I have to turn on my computer and open Photoshop.
No.
I've got updates.
Oh.
And like it's nice having the tools, being able to like erase things super easily and undo things. But so much of what like designing, like iterative design, when you're coming up with an enemy and deciding, hey, that doesn't work, is about seeing what you had before. And if you're able to like erase that super fast or, you know, undo it super fast, then it's hard to kind of look at what you had and make changes to it and decide, hey, this didn't work the first time. Why don't I change the shape here? Mm-hmm. So I think that's important. I think I'm gonna start doing that. I'm gonna draw on paper.
There you go, SKM1134. You've changed his iterative process.
You're changing me as an artist.
Changing you.
Like this.
Now I have to ask. This one's just for me. In the game, there are melee weapons, and they walk the line of not quite the bastard sword of Final Fantasy size, where it's bigger than your body, but not necessarily like a proper perspective body ratio to weapon that you would find in real life. Yeah. So how do you decide, this is dumb, how do you decide the proper length of a melee weapon?
The answer is you don't. You have to make it as big as possible because these sprites are tiny and the player is super small. And if you can see a giant rectangle drop from an enemy, you have to decide, like in that second, is that a sword or is that a gun? And do I want that? But also, like, I mean, that's like the developer and me answering the question. But the reality is, I think giant weapons look super cool. And I don't care how big they are. They just need to be giant. And like, especially the black crater, which not a lot of people have seen. It's a super cool hammer, tech hammer that slices bullets in half, and it's cursed, and it's great.
It looks like a giant
I'm like,
ball.
I'm proud of that weapon, and I want people to see it. So I'm gonna like make it as big as possible.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the answer to that question.
Okay. All right. Let's see. This kind of follows with that. Nitesco. Sorry if I butchered that. Many of the sprites have a lot of noticeable detail. Did you have any difficulty putting so much detail into the pixel work for Black Future 88? I mean, you're talking about size.
Yeah.
How do you decide when you're making a pixel-based thing, which you already have to deal with squares, like how much little detail to do?
That's a great question, because a lot of why we had to redo the sprites, like the very old sprites, is because they just had too much noise, and they were messy and noisy, and I had to be told by one of our artists that there's just too much going on here. And I said, hey, could you show me what you mean by like keeping the noise down? He took my sprite, he redid it, and took all of the cool little details that I had implied and abstracted them to a point where you could still see them from far away. And what was the question? I forgot. What the question
difficulty putting detail into the pixel work.
Yeah. That's right. So I had to kind of have a little bit of tutoring on that regard, where we had to like figure out exactly how much detail was needed and how much detail can we afford to put on the screen before you make the player sick. But after that, it was in the same vein as when I was doing the t-shirt designs. I was sort of developing a muscle memory of, I feel like there should be something here I'm going to put teeth in. But in this case, I was developing like a shorthand for small mechanical bits, like on all of the little circular drones. You'll notice little black lines that are kind of coming off of them and then like popping in and out. And that was just a really, really simple way of implying complex machinery without rendering any details. And that was something that took no time to do. I just had like a sprite, and I gave myself 6 or 7 frames in the animation to just doodle out these little lines coming off of them. And when you look at them from far away, you can see that, like, oh, this is a robot. This isn't just like a piece of metal that's floating. It has these little whirly gigs and spokes and things. But in reality, they're just like little black squares that are coming out and coming on.
We were looking at the cursed terminal, which I think is a good example of that, because you can see around the T section where there's these little kind of black metal things that look, they're reading as kind of antenna or metal or something.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, let's see what else we have. Billy is asking, what was the hardest thing to do in your whole life, Zach?
The hardest thing I ever had to do with is probably be born. That kind of sucks.
No, I'm sure he means in reference to the game.
The hardest thing to do, I think the hardest thing to do was just learn on the fly. Because again, I was in school and I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know how to make like sprites that made sense or that looked nice on a sprite sheet. And Don was very patient with me with this, but just like going 0 to 60 on a project like really sucks, but it's a very quick way of developing a lot of skills and failing really fast and learning from that. And I think just the process of learning on the fly was really, really hard.
No, it makes sense. I mean, you're coming up with everything from a very short descriptor, and that's really takes a lot of talent and time and creativity that you're burning in your brain, and then the execution of that is a whole different thing.
Yeah, it especially helps when you have other people that you're working with and being transparent about what you can and can't do. Because I was like really struggling with one of these enemies, and I tossed it over to Theo, and I said, "Hey, could you just quickly mock up how you would do this?" And like being honest about what I couldn't do helped me learn faster because everyone else could understand what I was struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right, it doesn't look like we have any more questions in chat. If you have anything else to ask, now's your time. Otherwise, we're going to close it out and maybe look at the website that you've got going on, which I'll link one more time if people want to see your art.
Sure. Oh, I've got a little bit of a fun thing.
Ooh.
Not related to Black Future.
Okay.
But my girlfriend and I have been working on this cool tabletop RPG.
Oh, yes.
And if you follow me on social media, I either talk about Black Future or I talk about this other project because I'm not, for some reason, not very creative.
It's a totally different genre. You're fine.
I know.
But all right, so that's Sneb, SNEB, and I think you're underscore SNEB on
it's
Twitter.
Like underscore SNEB underscore.
Underscore. Okay. So yes, I don't have that at the tip of my fingers, but
we have this great tabletop RPG, sort of designed for players that are a little put off by the complexity of D&D and just want something light and it's kind of fun and casual. We have this project that has it's got a Facebook group and... Yeah.
Did you ever get feedback? I did pass that to my friends and hoped that they gave you some thoughts.
No,
I don't know if they did. It was kind of dead zone. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. We're getting a lot of feedback from friends, and we're starting to get a little bit of a fan base on it. But that whole thing, this whole project is just like awesome because I love designing games, but I'm not great with programming, and I do art because I want to be a part of games. And doing like analog stuff like tabletop games and board games is like the perfect medium because you can just come up with an idea and test it, not have to worry about like broken builds and like debugging things. And yeah, no, that's just been great. I would recommend it to someone who wants to get into game design is to design tabletop games first.
I mean, there are a lot of mechanics and systems involved, and people will definitely tell you if it's broken.
It's true. We've been given the hard critique.
There you go.
This is boring.
This is boring. Oh. This character is OP.
We're trying.
Gaia. Yeah. Okay, so as we wrap up here, those of you who don't know can play Black Future 88 right now. The beta is available for purchase, and right now that doesn't have all the content for the final game, but it will roll out slowly, and by the time it does launch, which we have not announced one yet, you will have the full game, so you won't have to pay for it twice. And it's actually discounted if you start with the beta than if you just jumped in and got the full game. Yeah. So not only do you get to play and tell us what you think, but you get to play it before everyone else. So,
lucky.
Yeah. So huge thanks to Zac for all your hard work on Black Future 88 and for coming on here to tell us about art.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yay. All right, so everyone in Discord, this is sort of something we do for our Discord people every couple weeks or so, just to, a special reward for those of you who are loyal, community members for all of us. I'm going to give you the Discord if you want to jump in and become part of that. You'll get notified and have your questions asked for the next time we do a live stream for Black Future 88.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.